प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य मणिस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहसीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ May my speech be firmly established in mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. O self-effulgent Lord, be revealed in my consciousness. May the truths of the scriptures shine forth in my life. May not what I learn from them ever forsake me. Let me live my life day and night according to their teachings. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace. 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 Let us keep aside our temporary physical and mental identities like I am a man or I am a woman or my height is so much, my weight is so much, this is my age, this is the place I was born in, these are my parents, here are my siblings. All this is the identification with our body. Let us tell ourselves, this is all temporary. I am not that. I am also not the mind. The thoughts and emotions they come and go. I am beyond that too. Being freed the painful burden of the physical and mental identity. Now let us hold on to our true, unchanging, ever-present identity. It is beyond time and space. In this I am ever blissful, ever perfect, ever free, immortal being. I am divine. Let us hold on to this true divine identity of ours. That very God, which is my true nature, the blissful, all-pervading, luminous consciousness itself, without any change, is appearing as all the changing forms. But it is the same one reality, like the one ocean appearing in innumerable, continuously rising and falling waves. All the forms rise and fall. They are not real. Om, peace, peace, peace. So let us begin today's discussion with our usual opening chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashvapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam Bhuvi Grinanti Te Bhurida Janaha. So let us begin from where we had left last Tuesday, and that is the incident that happened at Kalna near Kolkata, where Sri Ramakrishna had gone there to meet the holy personage Bhagwan Das Babaji. And then there Bhagwan Das Babaji was kind of giving his judgments about, no, I will not allow this, I will throw this person from our order, I will teach that fellow a lesson, and so forth. Now, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consciousness just rose, and then he had saluted Bhagwan Das Babaji and was standing there when these statements were going on. And then the first thing, this is on page 626, the first thing the master heard when he came to Bhagwan Das was that he would confiscate a sadhu's rosary and expel him from the community. A little later he heard that it was in order to teach others that Babaji had continued telling his beads and wearing marks on his holy body. Thus, when Babaji said repeatedly, I will expel that sadhu, I will teach people, I have not given up telling beads and wearing marks, the simple-hearted master could suppress his annoyance no more. He could no longer remain seated like a courteous and gentle guest. He rose to his feet, demanding, is that how you think of yourself even now? You think you teach people? You think you will expel this man from your community? You think you can decide to give up telling your beads or not? Who made you a teacher? Do you think you can teach the world unless the Lord who made it allows you to? The master's cloth had fallen from his shoulders to the ground, as had his cloth from around his loins. A wonderful radiance shone from his face. He was in such ecstasy that he was not aware of what he was saying and to whom he was speaking. After those few words, he became overwhelmed with emotion and went into samadhi. Let us try to picture this scene in front of us to get the real meaning or the emphatic message that is emanating from it. That here is Sri Ramakrishna going to see Bhagwan Das Babaji, a well-known spiritually illumined figure in the community of devotees, Vaishnava devotees. And Babaji was the personage who was tremendously respected, revered by all those present there. He was like a deity worshipped. And now what has happened? He was certainly a holy person, but there are some remnants of this ego, and because of which these things were coming up. It does happen with the people who are regarded as holy, that other people come to take instructions from them. They show tremendous respect and reverence to them, and it is very easy to lose this awareness that I am just an instrument. It is God who is working through this instrument, not I, but thou alone. When this awareness goes away or gets hidden a little bit, then the ego means what? This identification with body and mind. And then the awareness that I am connected to God goes away. That is why, as we were meditating in the beginning, it is very important to feel that these temporal identities connected with our body or mind, they have to be kept away. So, even when we put them on, we don't identify with that. Care has to be taken that we have assumed for a purpose this body, just as we have assumed, say 2-3 days ago it was so cold suddenly, so people took out their warm garments and put them on, and they didn't identify with those clothes. We don't identify with the clothes. Suppose the clothing is white, and we don't say I am white because of that clothing. The clothing is blue. I don't say I am blue. I don't say I am that because it is the color of the clothing. I don't say I am made of wool. The jacket may be made of wool or whatever fur, but I am not made of that. I am not that. So similarly, I am not body. I have taken it up. It is, or even that ego doesn't remain. It has been put on me by that same divine. So, one is tied to the divine awareness. I don't have exact words to describe that, but when due to lot of honor, this for a moment, this awareness about being identified with divine gives way to the awareness that I am this body, I am the head of this community, and it depends on me to keep it well disciplined and in order. So you one becomes, identified with the body, and thus loses identification with God. As long as it is the for a purpose that body has been taken on. Like you got into the car, drove for a purpose, never thought that I am car. For a purpose you got into the car, as soon as you got here, then what did you do, Naomi? You got out of the car, isn't it? Yeah, so it was just for a time being you assumed that your connection with the car. And then you got out of it. So similarly, that you got into body. It is a car, isn't it? It is a car. So, therefore people do not always, they are not here in the class always, even when they are physically there. Physically there means just as their car can be in the parking lot, but they take out their body from the parking lot. Body is another car. They put that car on the chair here. And then get out of that chair, get out of that car of body. And then the mind keeps on wandering all around. And therefore, it is sometimes I can see that it is that the person is not there, the body is there, but the person is in some la la land or not there, and therefore it works to my advantage also, because then in every lecture I can keep on telling the same thing, and since people were not there, they don't remember that it was the same thing that is being repeated. So, but that is how these are temporary identities, and when we see that I am that, then, well, the idea that I am ruling these people, I am superior to them, all those thoughts come up. And Sri Ramakrishna noticed this. Unconsciously, I mean, he had not gone there to discipline Babaji, not at all. He went there to pay his reverence. Now, as he did that, he could not now that his teachership could not just stay quiet when he heard this, because here was a very highly devoted and spiritually illumined soul, but is going to fall in this trap. So, Guru saves. One aspect of the nature of Guru is that it teaches is one thing, it saves. The pitfalls are there. That there is a very beautiful devotional song written by Kabir, that who can show the way and guide on the way but Guru, because it is the path is fraught with so many dangers. There is this big steep hill of delusion, Bhranti ki pahari. It is, and then there are all those rivulets, and then there are those deep valleys full of that forest of egoism. So, who can save us from that? There are all those lust and greed, the wild man-eating animals roaming there. Who can save from that? It is the Guru. So, Sri Ramakrishna's Guru just rose there, and then he said there that all these things. Who made you teacher? Do you think you can teach the world unless Lord who made it allows you to? So, and then he was not saying any of this thing identified with body. In Sri Ramakrishna, one can see this, that he has taken up the body, and that is how the incarnation of God is. The body is taken on with our awareness, like our awareness when we take on the body. I am not the garment we are aware of. We saw that. I am not the clothing. Similarly, our body and inner clothing, the God incarnation is always aware that I am not the body, I am using the body. So this is a very important difference to be kept in mind. And so, as Sri Ramakrishna was saying this, that body awareness, that even the idea that I have taken this body gotten still loose, and the clothing just fell off that, and his body was like a cloth that had fallen from him. So that is what is called Bhava Samadhi, that it was overtaken by that divine mood. Mood, that Bhava means mood. And in that mood all this was happening. He was not aware of what he was saying. It is many such incidents you can see in this book, as well as in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and many books associated there, that Sri Ramakrishna gets into this mood of samadhi, and thus he is not aware that he is body. It is, so whatever happens is not really under his conscious control at all. So, thus, to this point, everyone had shown love and respect for the perfected Babaji. That is what happens, You are accustomed, we get into a kind of rut, that when people are showing respect to us, and we get accustomed to that. All those, because it gives a pleasant sensation that people are revering us, they are respecting us, and so you start feeling that I must be somebody very special. And thus now the ego, it surges up. So this is how ordinary person, even though a greatly elevated soul like this Bhagwan Das Babaji, perfected soul, Swami Saradananda says, yet when connected to this body, because people are revering, people are saying all nice things, people are obedient, nobody is challenging Bhagwan Das Babaji's words, his personality or his authority, and so he was not accustomed to be scolded. But because of his tremendous spiritual awareness, he immediately understood. That is the beauty, that it was wrong on my part. So and no one had been capable of protesting his words or pointing out his shortcomings, or bold enough to do so. The master's conduct surprised him at first. Under such circumstances, ordinary human beings would become angry and try to take revenge. But Babaji did not react that way. Ordinary human beings, become quickly defensive. If I say to somebody anytime, hey, why you should not be doing like this, isn't it? That person, what happens is, becomes defensive. That no, tries to find out excuses and even becomes upset and angry. So that would have been a natural reaction from an ordinary person. But this Bhagwan Das Babaji was a true devotee, a truly perfected soul. And therefore, it did not happen like that with him. So, what he did, that this simplicity that had developed in him from his austerities helped him to realize the true meaning of Sri Ramakrishna's words. He sincerely believed that there was no doer other than God in this world. An egotistical man may think that he is doing everything, but truly he is nothing but a slave of circumstances. He can understand and accomplish only what he has been permitted to. Let worldly people do whatever they like, but the devotees and spiritual aspirants should not forget even for a moment that God is the doer. Worldly people, this book is not really meant for them to read. So therefore, it is only for sincere devotees who want to make their life get illumined. Isn't it, Charlie? The book is not meant for everybody in the world. No book is meant for everybody in the world. There are the aspirants who are qualified to read, study those things. It is therefore, you see, those textbooks are there meant only for the grad students of neurology. So now you don't expect a middle school student to read that. It is not for that student. It is for the graduate students. So it is like that. So this book is for those who want sincerely to lead a life centered around what is the true nature of this self. That is called spiritual life. That word is getting very much glibly used these days. That yes, spiritual. There is nothing spiritual except that person may be drinking spirits too much. That's all. But it is the spiritual means the life centered around that which does not change. Life lived around that which keeps on changing. That is the materialistic life lived. Because matter, it changes, like body changes, everything changes. Now it requires a penetrative vision to see in the midst of all that is changing, that which does not change. And it is there. It is there. We in a way know it, that there is something that does not change. And actually our day-to-day life also is possible only because we unconsciously are holding on to that unchanging principle. It is many times I give that funny example that if suppose I asked Yona, please can you give me $100, I am in need of money, tomorrow I will return it to you. And she said, okay Swami, no problem, but tomorrow I need it, remember to return it to me tomorrow. I said, sure. I took the money. Next day when she sees me, said, I hope Swami you remember. What? No, you took $100, you were to return me today. Well, who took it? It is, the matter is changing, the body is changing. Therefore, who took it? Who gave it? Changed. It is, that won't happen. She won't accept like that. Why? Because there is something that is unchanging. Based on that, the commitments are made. Based on that, we feel that we are the same being. Although the body is changing, how do we feel that we are the same being? Because we are somewhere aware of that unchanging reality. So, we know it. We have awareness of it, but not conscious awareness. It is. So, a spiritual life is the attempt to hold on to that. And there we see that all that we are really seeking is there. So, that is for those this book is there. That, okay, look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna. That is that great light, like the lighthouse, it shows you, the ships are shown the proper path and avoid the dangers and so forth. So, a lighthouse. So, in that light we lead our life. That is, for them all these teachings have been given. So, whatever therefore Swami Saradananda, the author, mentions, that whatever the worldly people may do, the one who is a spiritual aspirant should always try to dissociate from these temporal identities, the body and the mind, and hold on to that unchanging spiritual identity. That is the way that we can walk in the following the footsteps of Sri Ramakrishna. So, therefore, it is mentioned here that spiritual aspirants should not forget even for a moment that God is the doer. Not that we remember it only when we make mistakes, isn't it? That God is the doer. I am not the doer. It is, didn't you say God is the doer? So this mistake was made by God. Why am I being punished for it? It is, then you should remember that it is, you are not being punished, it is God who is being punished. But no, our understanding is really so poor in this matter, that all when it is the praise is to be hogged, then you say, I do it. Many times in the because the educated world, one uses a very polished language to say that one should not be boastful. I don't want to be boastful, but you see, I am compelled to present the facts that this is how I did it. It is God used me as instrument, but it is, this is the instrument. And so the point is that they see how the identification goes in the worldly people, because they want to, having this identification, they are helpless really. So, even though they understand the folly of it at some point, yet it is difficult to escape that trap. So, but the devotees, they having been made aware of this, so therefore they are trying conscientiously to turn their life towards God, the unchanging reality. So Swami Saradananda says that not even for a moment forget about this divine identity. That is the doer. This is the message that Sri Ramakrishna taught through his life. Let me remind here of that wonderful incident that happened when Sri Ramakrishna was talking to M. And there was the discussion before that about this ego and doership. And Sri Ramakrishna suddenly asks M, do you think, showing this body, his body, do you think I have ego? Now a very difficult question to answer. So M thought for a few seconds and said that, well, you have kept a little of it for the work of the Divine Mother. Then Sri Ramakrishna immediately corrects, no, not like that. It is she who has kept some for her work. So even that I have kept it for her work is not allowed. It is the Divine Mother has kept some for her work. Who cares? I don't care about it. It is her work. So that is how the idea is, that they walk on this path of giving up this idea, I am the doer. It is, if they do, they will deviate from the right path and fall. Those powerful words of the Master awakened Babaji's insight intensely, and he recognized his own shortcomings and became humble and modest. See, Sri Ramakrishna was not much known those days. It is, Babaji had no reason to know about Sri Ramakrishna. On the other hand, Babaji's fame was all over. So, it is, let us use the present tense, it is the sign of great spiritual wisdom and spiritual enlightenment of Babaji that he immediately understood his mistake and corrected himself. He did not take any offense at being scolded. It is being like drawn away from falling. It is so he was grateful that he is being brought to the right awareness by Sri Ramakrishna. So, and he recognized his own shortcomings and became humble and modest. Moreover, the extraordinary manifestation of a spiritual mood in Sri Ramakrishna convinced Babaji that the Master was not an ordinary person. We can easily infer that their spiritual conversation caused a wonderful current of divine bliss to flow there. That it is Sri Ramakrishna's that going into Samadhi did not really impress everybody in the same way. It requires some understanding or a little evolution in the spiritual realm to get the feel of it. Most of the people thought of Sri Ramakrishna therefore as insane or as having some epilepsy and all. And many our learned many psychologists have written books about that, that it was an epileptic disease that Sri Ramakrishna converted to his advantage by making that show of samadhi and such things out of it. Now, what can be said about it? You see, it is only those who have some spiritual upliftment already, they could see that. Others, they are not really qualified to understand these things just because they had some big degrees in psychoanalysis and all that stuff. They may be a big university in that elite academic circle, they could be very big people. But that doesn't mean much at all. It is Bhagwan Das Babaji realized it, understood it. So many who had some spiritual awakening, they could feel it. Others would not feel it. You require some understanding, some expertise of that. Like a physician would understand by this, by counting the pulse, what is going on inside, is there fever, blood pressure, all that an expert could understand. But an ordinary person would not be able to know anything. So it requires some level of expertise. So Babaji could see that. We can easily infer their spiritual conversation caused a wonderful current of divine bliss to flow there. Hriday had also told the author about these things, Hriday and many others who heard it from them. So it is, Babaji was moved by seeing Sri Ramakrishna's repeated ecstasies and overflowing bliss during their discussion. Furthermore, he saw in Sri Ramakrishna the vivid manifestation of Mahabhava that he had been struggling to understand for a long time by studying the scriptures. So he felt a deep love and respect for Sri Ramakrishna. There has been the discussion earlier of this Mahabhava, which Radha's description is there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's description is there. Mahabhava means being totally identified with God, some tremendous manifestation of those signs come on that person. So that is called Mahabhava. So it is not possible for ordinary people to get Mahabhava. Getting Mahabhava, forget it. Even understanding Mahabhava is not possible for ordinary people. Babaji, having read those books, he was thinking, oh, how is this Mahabhava? It is not possible to really get any idea unless there is a manifestation before it. That is why I had told that Vedanta story many times, that by mere words to explain the principles of Vedanta, that everything is evanescent, God alone is real and all that, these words do not carry much understanding. It is therefore told that it is like teaching a blind person That blind person was, they were talking about milk, and the blind man asked, but what is milk? Somebody told me it is white. Now, for blind person, what is black, what is white, it doesn't all same, you see. So, no sense of color. So, say, what is white? That is, the cranes are white. Cranes. What is a crane? Crane, it has, its neck is bent like a sickle. Neck bent like a sickle, and that is a crane. Now this blind man was walking in the garden with a stick, and there was a sickle there. So somebody just said, watch out, there is the sickle there. So the blind man immediately said, oh, so that means there is milk there. Now, so by words we can understand only this much. It is to understand the sickle equivalent to milk. That is the academician's understanding of all these scriptures. There you need to do sadhana, the practice without which these truths do not reveal themselves to us. So this manifestation of Sri Ramakrishna made Babaji see this truth. Oh, this is what I had read in this book like Mahabhava. It is, I remember when you see that, then you immediately connect to that. I used to work in our mobile dispensary those days, and then the doctor used to tell me about some diseases just for information. So one gentleman had come who had what in American terminology gets called shingles. There in Indian English it is called Herpes Zoster. So herpes. So this doctor told me, well, this is a viral infection, very much like measles, and there is really nothing one can do, just manage some side infections and so forth, but very painful. So, and its onslaught comes with a like of a a painful sensation shoots in you. And then now I could not understand anything. A few days passed away, and then while we were coming back from our dispensary work, I was still in that bus. So in that bus, I suddenly felt that shock. Oh! And then I thought that is what the doctor was describing as how the herpes comes. Sure it was. By the time we reached, it took about half an hour or 40 minutes, I could see all those pimples coming, the place getting red and painful. So, because now that the experience and what I had heard about it got connected. Without that, you can't really connect it. So, Babaji had read about it. He was a very highly elevated spiritual aspirant. And still, because not having seen it, he had no clear understanding of it. But here, in Sri Ramakrishna, he sees that, he experiences that. It is now so many things kind of fall in place. All the doubts get resolved. So, So he felt deep love and respect for Sri Ramakrishna. When he heard that this was the Paramhansa of Dakshineshwar, who out of ecstasy had occupied Sri Chaitanya's seat at the Harisabha congregation at Kolutola, there was no limit to his sorrow and repentance for the bitter reproaches he had used against the master. Just remember that incident. Sri Ramakrishna sat on that seat kept for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then when it was reported to Babaji, he said, well, please protect that, let it not get repeated, be very watchful, let nobody touch that seat of Chaitanya, and so forth, and criticize the one who, that insane fellow, he went and stood on that. But now when he saw it was this person, he thought that no, he said very wrong words about him, and humbly he bowed down to Sri Ramakrishna and begged his forgiveness. Thus spiritual meetings between the master and Bhagwan Das Babaji ended that day. After a while, the master and Hriday returned to Mathur and told him the whole story, praising the advanced spiritual state of Babaji. After this, Mathur also went to visit Babaji. He made arrangements for a worship service of the deity in the ashrama and a special festival with a day-long feast. This ends this chapter. Then there is the fourth chapter in this study of Sri Ramakrishna as Guru. This book, Sri Ramakrishna Leela Prasanga, or Sri Ramakrishna and his Divine Play, has 5 volumes. 2 of them are the Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher. Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher part 1, Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher part 2. So, and then there is Sri Ramakrishna in his divine mood, Divya Bhava. Then there is Sri Ramakrishna as the spiritual aspirant, sadhaka. And then there is the childhood and the other contextual description of that place. That is the first volume. But that was not the order in which the book was written. Swami Saradananda wrote first his Guru Bhava. Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher was written first. Then he wrote Sri Ramakrishna as a spiritual aspirant. Then he wrote that volume, Sri Ramakrishna in that divine mood. And the last was Sri Ramakrishna in his childhood and so forth. So, all this, this chapter 4 of this Master as a Guru conclusion, this chapter is related to that some very important concluding remarks about, not that this volume ends here, there are a few more chapters to go, but this volume has this, what we have read so far, let us take a concluding, synoptic view of it. So this is the next chapter, and Master as a Guru conclusion. We shall of course study it from next Tuesday. Today's time is almost over, so we shall think about it for a little while, for a few seconds, and then in case if there are questions, we shall take them up. Yes, please. Any questions?
Swamiji, there is no question, but there is a request here. From Mark Moore, please pronounce and sing the Gayatri Mantra, how you learnt it.
Oh, well, that is not for this class, please, it is, I can recite it for the person separately. It is not for this particular this. So sorry about that. Yeah.
Then there's a question from Sucheta Ghule. Could Babaji identify Sri Ramakrishna as Incarnation?
Yes, most probably. It is not mentioned here explicitly, but we can see that after seeing the signs of Mahabhava, and it was mentioned in the scriptures that only the incarnations of God have the signs of Mahabhava, and Babaji, being actually a very great scholar about all these Vaishnava scriptures, looking at these signs, one can conclude that he had a fair idea that Sri Ramakrishna is incarnation of God, although I confess that there is in this reading we don't get that explicit mention from Babaji. No.
There is no other question here.
Okay. Any other question here? So let us conclude with the closing prayers. Our retreat is more than full. The retreat to take place on June 12th, and we had decided to have 35 people, maximum attendance 35, but we had to expand the room because already 45 have registered. So therefore, no more registration, and the link has been disabled on the website now. So may the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.